Good morning and welcome to your Pathway Home. This is Matthew Allen with Jason Schofield.
Good morning, Matt, and good morning, everyone who's joining us today.
Welcome. We appreciate you being on our program today. It is just great to be able to start the day together an hour earlier.
Absolutely.
At least by our body clocks it is. I was thinking this morning, for those of us who always get up early on Sunday morning, that we're the first ones on the tip of the spear to have to deal with the extra hour you lose of sleep and all of that. But it's all good. We're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to go this morning as we study together. We just appreciate you being here with us today.
Yeah, I'm excited to share some of the thoughts that we have here today, Matt, and I hope you all will benefit from some of the things that we were thinking about.
Yeah, we want you to know that this program is a work of the Kettering Church of Christ. We meet at 4600 Bigger Road here in on the southeast side of Dayton. We're just minutes off of I-675, exit 7. If you plug us in your GPS on Bigger Road, you cannot miss us. It is very easy to find. We meet at 9:30 this morning for our children's Bible devotional. We meet at 9:45 for our Bible classes. We have a variety of Bible classes, 2 adult classes. One is on parenting, and the other one is this morning talking about facing temptation. We have classes for your kids all the way from basically a year old all the way up through high school. These are biblically driven. They're relevant. Our teachers spend a lot of time in prep and work. We care about your kids. We want them to know more about God, and so it's a wonderful opportunity for you to join us there this morning for that. And then at 10:45, we'll come together for our praise and prayer and preaching. Hope you can join us for that. We have a lot of guests every week come by the Kettering Church, and we'd love it if you would today. Today I'll be preaching out of Psalm 63. We're going to be talking about our hearts thirsting for God. So I hope you'll join us as we come together today as God's church here at Kettering. We certainly appreciate all of you who follow us on this program, on the website, ketteringchurch.com. Many of you that we run into out in the community and just give us feedback about the things we're doing. We certainly appreciate you as well. So we're excited to get going today.
Yeah, Matt, and we appreciate a special, shout out to those people in different states, different countries who loyally watch us each week, and we appreciate it. And I appreciate also, Matt, the opportunity to sit in for our brother Josh Lee, who's sick today, and we hope that he gets to feeling better.
Yes, you are the sub of the sub.
That's right.
Jim Grushon, who is my normal co-host, has been down in Florida for a few months, and I think they're going to be coming back to Ohio later in the week, and he'll be back on the program here before too long. But it is always good, Jason, to have you here. In fact, over the year that we've been doing this, there's only been a few times that you and I have been able to work together on this, so I'm excited to have you here this morning. Well, as we get started on our topic today, and by the way, I haven't mentioned this, we really like it when our viewers drive the topic that we talk about on this broadcast. And so if you'd like to do that this morning, if you have something you'd like to ask us, if you have a comment or anything where you'd like to participate in the program this morning, just type out your comment on the line below of your screen, and we will take a look at that and respond accordingly. If you want to email us, you can do that. yourpathwayhome@kettering.church. Again, yourpathwayhome@kettering.church. And by the way, that email is not just being looked at right now during the broadcast, but we check that all during the week. So if you are watching this later on YouTube and you have something that comes to mind that you'd like for us to discuss, just send us an email, yourpathwayhome@kettering.church, and we will put your question on the air at the next broadcast. If you'd like to call us this morning, you can do that, 937-434-8481. So those are the ways to get a hold of us, and we look forward to hearing from you. So, Jason, with that, I thought, you and I talked a little bit last night about maybe some things to talk about today. I just wanted to kind of talk about our view of God this morning. and really where this is in the culture, because I think as we look around our world, and listen, what happens in the culture does affect the church.
Absolutely.
And so as I look around, I think largely Americans have lost a view of God and who He is. And I just want to kind of show you what I mean by that, and then you can kind of respond accordingly. But think about how when it comes to worshiping God and coming together, we're living in a very entertainment-driven society, and we've kind of turned church into that. When we look at how people approach worship, it's very passive. We have performers up in that are in the front of the building. We judge people by the quality of their song leading. We judge preachers by, well, that sermon was really good or really bad. And we judge it on a scale of 1 to 10, and we're kind of missing the point of what all of this is about. It's not so much about how we feel, it's about what we're doing to reverence God. And I think in some places that point is missed, and we need to be careful because we can start viewing God simply for what we can get out of Him. We can view worship for what we can get out of it, rather than going in and approaching God from the standpoint of reverencing Him for who He is and what He is, and just how magnificent and glorious He really is.
That's right. We never want to take a casual approach to God and our service to Him. We never want to do anything that wouldn't be reverent and to recognize Him for who He is. And the problem is, in society, I think that we have become very casual with about everything that we do. And like you said, we're seeing this reflected in how people worship God and how we approach Him. I mean, I was listening to a broadcast just the other day, and their approach to God is the preacher actually referred to Him as Daddy. It just left me a sick feeling in my mind, because are we really reverencing God if we call Him Daddy? He is God. He addressed Himself as the I am. In the Ten Commandments to the Israelites, he told them that His name was to be respected. Exodus 20:7, He said that they were not to use His name or to misuse His name or to use His name in vain. And now we even, through texting or social media or whatever, people write OMG, and they just use that term, and they never think about what kind of respect or disrespect that is actually offering to God.
Yeah, I tell you, you're right on, and I think it's important. We do understand the fact that God does present Himself as our heavenly Father in Scripture. Paul cried out in Romans chapter 8, Abba, Father, and that's a term of tender affection. So we certainly don't want to deny that. However, I know where Jason's going with what he said, because we have gone so far in one direction to the exclusion of the other inside the culture, and we don't reverence God in the way that we should. And not only in worship, but I really think in life in general. Think about how much thought are we giving to God each and every day, and as far as His Word, our hunger for God, how strong is that? That's really the question.
Right, and I think back about the time where Moses seen the burning bush. In Exodus chapter 3, beginning in verse 5, he said, "Do not come near. Take off your sandals off of your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." And he said, "For I am the God of your father, and the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. You see, God is a holy being. He's not just your buddy. He is a holy being, and He needs to be treated as the Spirit that He is.
Yeah, I think what happens in our culture is that 1, Americans are largely satisfied. We are content. And really, I think inherently most of us are selfish. And so when that happens, we can grow indifferent. And I want to point our viewers this morning back to Malachi. If you go back to Malachi and you look at chapter 1, that's one of the things that the prophet there is pointing out to the people. And it's very interesting in thinking about Malachi because we have a Thursday class here at Kettering right now. We're going through the book of Nehemiah, and Malachi is a contemporary of Nehemiah. And if you go through and study Nehemiah's book, you see where the people are. You see the continual disappointment that they've experienced since they've come back into the land, continuous obstacles, and really they battled. They were hot and cold for God, the people were. And Malachi is the prophet of God during this time. And if you look in chapter 1, he goes after the people of that time for being indifferent toward God. They were weary, they were tired. They looked at worship as something that was a dread, a drudgery, and that really, if you go through and read those verses from about verse 13 of Malachi 1 all the way down through about verse 18, their basic problem is that they basically failed to see and understand the greatness of God. They let short-sighted thinking prohibit them from seeing God for who he really was.
Right. Maybe you could share a verse there from Malachi that helps point that out, how the people had lost track of who God really is.
Yeah, that'd be great. For example, when you look in verse 10, Malachi 1, the prophet cries out, Oh, that there were one among you who would shut the doors, that you might not kindle fire on my altar in vain. After I have no pleasure in you, says the Lord of hosts, and I will not accept an offering from your hand. Well, why is that? Well, because they were treating worship with contempt and kind of a drudgery. If you go down to verse 12, they were profaning the Lord's table and the fruit, and the reason was, look at the problem. It wasn't that they were worshiping incorrectly. It's not that they were going by something that was not prescribed in the law. They were following that. The problem is their attitude. Verse 13, Malachi 1. Would you say, what a weariness this is, and you snort at it. You bring what has been taken by violence or lame or sick, and you bring this as your offering. And God says, I'm not going to accept that. But I think the biggest thing God's getting at here in the beginning part of verse 13 is their attitude. What a weariness this is. Why do we have to do this? Well, listen, we have Christians from churches all over the country today meeting together. And yes, we're going to go through what we have commonly referred to as the 5 acts of worship. We're going to pray, we're going to sing, we're going to hear preaching, we're going to give, and we're going to partake of the Lord's Supper. And look, many churches will do that today. But what is my attitude coming in as I do those things? Am I approaching it from the sense of weariness? Am I approaching it from the sense I'm just here because it's my family tradition? How am I viewing God?
Yeah, it's very sad to think that we can go from looking at worship as a delight and a pleasure to be able to return our thanksgiving and praise to the great I am, to something that we would find burdensome. And again, it kind of goes back to, is the church starting to reflect what society is? Because if you look at society, and generalizations are never fair, right. I get that, but we see this trend that people are really finding God an inconvenience to them rather than a pleasure. Some of the things I was thinking is, it used to be, even in our lifetime, that Sunday everything shut down. And people knew that we are going to worship God today. You couldn't eat out. You couldn't go to the store and do the regular stuff. And I'm not saying that those things are wrong on Sunday, but what I'm saying is that the entire community embraced the idea that this is the Lord's day, and this is a day that we will regard him as holy and spend special time with God.
There was something different
right.
about the day. right? And I know you and I, Jason, grew up in similar cultures, even though we were 4 or 5 states removed. There's a lot of similarity, I think, between our 2 states. And when you think about, there was just something different, and people knew and understood that there's something special about this day. And we've lost that largely in the culture. And look, we're never going back to 1980. Okay, mm-hmm. I think we all understand that. And I just pulled 1980 out because it sounds good, and I wasn't very old.
Well,
1980,
Matt,
but we're never going back to that. So the question is what do we do in 2019?
Right, because there was a time when we were very proud, if you would, to say that when we displayed things like the 10 Commandments on our courtyard steps, mm-hmm. And when we mentioned God in our laws, when our leaders prayed to God before the people. But now you're not allowed to mention him in school in most contexts, that the Bible is considered more of a fable than it is the Word of God. We want to take "In God We Trust" off of our money. The early writers of the Scriptures, when they were copying the Scriptures, it said when they came to God's name, then they would actually stand up in reverence before they wrote his name out. And so that society realized that God is holy, and now we just use this term God as a euphemism mm-hmm. In texting, and that God is just some sort of a supernatural being that may or may not exist.
Well, okay, let's take this a step further. And we believe in God, but we only think about God when we need him. So we've turned God into kind of a dispensary that is there to pour out his blessings on us to make us happy and to fill our needs and wants. And listen, God does not operate that way. And listen, we have got to evaluate our viewpoint of God and who he is. And by the way, okay, this has always been a problem for mankind. When you look at the children of Israel, when they are coming into the land of Canaan, Moses in the book of Deuteronomy spends a lot of time reminding them that, hey, you are about to walk into a land of blessing. You're about to walk into a land that's where there's been cities built, you didn't build them. There's been wells dug, you didn't dig them. There's been fruit trees planted, you didn't plant those, but you're going to reap the benefits of all of those things. And when you get there, the warning is over and over and over again, do not forget me. Don't forget God, don't forget his word. And I'm going to just share with you a couple of passages out of Deuteronomy 8, where they are reminded over and over again. First of all, they're told, keep the commandments of the Lord your God by walking in his ways and fearing him. That's Deuteronomy 8:6. And then verse 10, you shall eat and be full, and you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. Take care, here's the warning, take care lest you forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments and his rules and his statutes, which I command you today, lest when you've eaten and are full and have both built good houses and live in them, when your herds and flocks multiply, your silver and gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, that your heart be lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slavery. And on it goes. And Jason, I think about your generation, my generation. We're basically the same age. You and I grew up in a time where, and still, even right now, our country is so blessed, we can't even understand how blessed we are. And it is easy for us, since we've never lived in a time where there was want or need or hunger or thirst. And I'm talking on a national scale, okay? I'm not denying there are individuals who are dealing with significant problems and going without. But nationally, okay, we are at a level of prominence, sophistication, wealth, power, that it is easy for us to take all of that for granted and then just coast and forget God.
I think that one of the points that you're saying that really stands out in my mind is the blessings which we have today are from God. And we are just overlooking that, and we want to credit ourselves for look what we have accomplished and look what we have. And it goes back to what happens in our worship, that we see people going there for us, what it provides for them, and it's not about God. And it comes back to way back with Israel. If you think how God helped them in Exodus to escape Egypt, and then it's shortly after that, they're there in the wilderness after they had escaped that bondage. In book of Exodus chapter 16, here they turn to Moses and they say, "You have brought us out of the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." They pointed out to Moses that, hey, wait, back in Egypt we had these flesh pots and all the bread and stuff we could eat until we were completely full. Now God has taken us, put us out in the wilderness just to starve to death. Yeah. I mean, when they had it bad, they had their hands out to God, help us, help us, help us. And now he is helping them, and they complain about how they've been helped. Yeah. They don't give him credit for what he's been doing for them.
Such is the human nature, right?
Exactly.
Right. We've got about 10 minutes to go on the broadcast this morning, and I see a number of you watching from around the country. We so appreciate that. Maybe you'd like to chime in. Maybe there's a question you have. Maybe there's something you can add to our discussion this morning. We'd like to hear from some of you who've joined in and let us know what you're thinking this morning. Comment below. Send us an email, yourpathwayhome@kettering.church, or you can call us 937-434-8481. So, Jason, these are all great thoughts. As we talk about the need for us to reverence God. Let me share this one passage with you, and I'll get out of Deuteronomy because the principle is just so it's just there, and it's so applicable for Americans today. This is the problems the Israelites faced. We face. Beware lest you say in your heart, "My power and the might of my hand has gotten me this wealth." You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your fathers, as it is to this day. And so, if you go on here, the application is there's a warning. If you go after other gods and serve them and worship them, God warned them that they would perish. And like all the other nations before, they would perish. So shall you perish because you didn't obey the voice of the Lord your God. Listen, we need to make the application, all right? While we're not living under the Old Testament and we're not dealing with all the sacrifices and all the things that you read about in Genesis through Numbers and Deuteronomy, there are expectations. And as people today, God is calling us to remember him, to reverence him, to respect him, and live under his ways. And if we'll do that, we'll prosper, okay? And it's not that we're doing this to prosper so that we can just be all about ourselves. We're doing it out of reverence and honor for God.
Right, and God deserves it.
Yeah.
Not just because of who he is, but what he's done for us. We could reference John 3:16, how he gave us his son, but we can just see how he has provided for us in so many different ways. What we're trying to say today is God is not just a figment of our imagination. It would be great to make a lot of people happy here today by saying, yeah, you have a choice. You can just worship this thing that you've never seen, and he's just an imaginary being that makes you feel happy. But he's more than that. He is the God of heaven. He's the one who has provided for our salvation, and he exhibits himself in a very real way today. And one of the passages, Matt, we were talking about was in Psalms 19.
Yeah.
And Psalms 19 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day and day pours out speech, and night reveals his knowledge. There is no speech, nor there's words whose voice is not heard." You cannot deny the presence of God. These beautiful things of the earth have been provided by him. He's very real. He's not a figment of our imagination. And this very real God loves you and wants a relationship with you.
Oh, yeah. That is the message of the Bible. God is calling out for us. He's calling out to you. to come to him, to seek him. And the promise is when we seek God with all of our heart, we will find him. That is throughout the New and the Old Testament. When you seek God with all your heart, you will find him. And those blessings will come. And again, we're thinking primarily spiritually here with all of that. But because that's really where it's at, right? I mean, when you think about we're doing this so we can get home to heaven, home after this life. Because every week, and you may be more since you work at a hospital, every day are reminded of the brevity of life. You know how fragile this is, and all of us, I think, as we get older, we have to know there is something more. There has to be more than this world, this life. And look, God is calling out through the pages of this book to tell us, here's how I want to be with you. Here's how you go home.
Right, Matt. And I'm thinking just what a positive story that is.
Yeah.
What a positive message it is to know that God loves us, cares for us, sent his son for us. And that's not the message that you get from some people. You get this idea that God is this very vengeful thing. And I actually believe that because of the way we view God, it's what's holding some people back from turning and worshiping him. They think, well, I know I need to change my life. I want to change. I want to be a better person. But I'm afraid that if I go to God, look at what I've done. What is he going to do with me? What is he going to think of me? And that reminds me of the story where Jesus was in the city of Gadarene. And he was there and he came upon a couple men who was full of demons in Luke chapter 4. And when they seen Jesus coming to them, they said, what, have you come to destroy us? You see, we have this idea that God is out to destroy us or attack us or be vengeful of us. Instead, he wants a relationship with us. And if you look at that story in Luke chapter 4, what did he do? He cast out the demons from those men and he freed them from that bondage of evil. And he wants to do the same thing for us today. He wants to come in our lives, not to destroy us, but to demonstrate his love and help us through Jesus Christ be freed from the evil that is within us.
Yeah, I mean God is for us, right? God is for us. He wants us to have a relationship with him, and all of these passages in the Old Testament, they just point out that tremendous desire of his reaching out to us. And Satan is constantly pumping the world with lies through the media and through our own thoughts, things that he puts in our head, and we've got to resist that and look and take the Bible at face value. We started off today by talking about reverencing God and how we've kind of lost that. I think the key to meaningful spiritual relationships, we seek God in a lot of ways, and I think sometimes we try to fulfill our religion and by just doing things. All right, by going to church, by making sure we live under a set of prescribed rules and expectations, and all of that is necessary. But the object of the what we're doing is not those things. The object of what we're doing is God himself. And when we seek God himself, all of those other things are going to be part of it, but they're not the object. They're not the reason why. I'm not just going to go to church today because it's what I've always done. I'm going so that I can see who God is and understand him and know him more and more and better and better.
I agree, Matt. I was just thinking that back in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, it talks about how God breathed into man the breath of life. He gave man life. And the same is true for us today, that he wants to give us life, but life eternal. And he does that by giving us Jesus Christ. He gave us life. And man, that makes him worthy of praise,
Oh, absolutely.
worthy of our thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And it's a pleasure and a delight to be able to spend time in his word, to be able to spend time with his brethren, to be able to worship him and give him the honor that he deserves. And we have got to change the way we are thinking about God and start to see him for the majestic Father that he really is.
Jason, I love it. And when we get that, when we understand it, and it becomes part of who we are. I think of the words of Psalm 34. And I'm going to read a few of these verses because I think it's a great way to kind of wrap up our program and express what we've been talking about today. So we've talked about how you view God. I hope we view God for who he is and how reverent he is and approach him with that. But here's the psalmist saying, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. O magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and he delivered me from all my fears. Those who look at him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. The poor man cried, and the Lord heard him, and saved him out of all of his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and delivers them. O taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. This is just the first 8 verses of Psalm 34. And I think it really shows us a lot about who God is and how he wants to have a relationship with us.
Well, and something that you always say, and you haven't said it this morning, but after reading that passage, a remark that always comes to be is that when you recognize God as who he is, then worship is just a natural reflection of that.
It is. And that, what we just read in Psalm 34, is the natural reflection, the natural result of a person who sees God for who he is and wants to know him more and more and more. So, Jason, here we go. We've got episode 48 in the books already here this morning.
Well, Matt, it's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. It's been a pleasure speaking with everyone here who's joined in with us. And we hope that sometime when you're in our area, you will join us in our worship service at 4600 Bigger Road in Kettering, Ohio. We have opportunities to teach for each and every age. I noticed on Facebook recently somebody said that we didn't have a kids program, we didn't have classes for kids, and that's a shame that that got reflected because we really do. We have something for every age, and in fact, we have classes nearly every day of the week.
5 out of the 7 days a week, I think.
And we want to be able to engage together because this is what we enjoy doing together as Christians. And so we will hope that you will reach out to us and take advantage of us. Come and worship with us. You're going to see something different because here is a place for you.
Well, Jason, as always, thank you for standing in for us this morning. We certainly appreciate it. Thanks to all of you who tune in every week. We certainly appreciate that. Let us hear from you through the week. Send us an email, yourpathwayhome@kettering.church. Until this time next week, we hope that you have a great week, and may God bless you. We'll see you next week.